Hello everyone and welcome back to another financial planning video. My name is Erin Varghese and I am a financial planner here at Pure Portfolios. We always say that no two advisors are the same. Everyone's services and offering is going to be a little different, and financial planning is no exception to that. So oftentimes people want to know, what does a financial plan really look like? It's not something that is necessarily tangible. You can't go to a store and pick one off the shelf. It's never a one size fits all. So your financial plan is going to look different from your friend's financial plan, especially if you are talking with different advisors and planners. So today we are going to be walking through a financial plan together. We hope that you view this as if you were sitting across the table from us and building a financial plan with Pure Portfolios. Now, often we hear people asking for some 80-page book that is the answer to all of their life questions. They want this exact roadmap for how their life is going to go. And as you know, we do not have a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what the future holds. So when we put together a financial plan, there are reports and guidelines and guidance that we can offer at the end of a financial planning session. But just know that a financial plan is never a finished product, always something that we are going to update and revisit. So while we do try to give a deliverable, something tangible that you can take home with you or reference whenever you need to, just know that it's never set in stone. This can always be changed and updated as your life and your financial life changes. So today we are looking at Frank and Jane's sample plan. These are our clients that we always look at in our financial planning videos. So some of this information may be familiar if you have looked at them before. So what you are looking at here is a balance sheet. Now this seems pretty basic, and it is, but we like to have all of our clients' assets and liabilities in one place. One, this is great to reference in the future. You can see how your net worth has grown, how your assets have changed, how your liabilities have been paid down or grown over time. And this is especially helpful for the person who, like me, is very visual. I can probably spout out all of my assets and liabilities, but it's nice to see a visual representation of everything all in one place. Another area where this is very helpful is if you need someone to know what you have. We will often see two spouses come in together. One typically takes charge of the finances over the other, and that's perfectly fine. But it's great for both of you to be in the know and to have an understanding of where you are at in your financial life. So being able to provide your spouse or loved one with a balance sheet so that they can see where everything is at, what all you have, can be very helpful. So again, basic, but it is valuable. Next, we are going to look at the beloved cash flow statement. Now, I know there's a lot of numbers on the screen. We've looked at it before, but we'll quickly run through it again. So to give you an idea of what is going on this page, on the left side here, we just see simple inflows and outflows. On the right side of the screen, we have your total portfolio assets. This is liquid, investable assets. This doesn't include things like a home or your cars. This just shows your total portfolio assets and how they grow over your lifetime. Now, Frank and Jane are 61 and 59. They have about 5-6 years left until retirement. You can see that highlighted here in blue. But what this cash flow statement really tells us is how much income they have coming in, what they have going out, and how their portfolio assets are moving year over year. So everything to the left of the screen, again, is everything coming in. Everything to the right is going out. And that doesn't necessarily mean expenses. And this doesn't necessarily mean your expenses are your daily living expenses. This includes everything like planned savings, taxes paid, etc., etc. My grandma always said, everything has a place and everything in its place, and your money is no exception to that rule. So we count every single dollar coming in and going out here, and we can drill down into each of these different categories. So once you reach retirement, this net cash flow is a really important number to us. So I'll zoom in a little bit more. We're getting to the point here. But once we reach retirement, this net cash flow number is what we are really interested in seeing. So once they hit that retirement age, we can see what their income is. Now, so the income in their first year of retirement is about $109,000. Now, this could be anything from pensions, Social Security, part-time work, whatever your income may be, that is all listed in the income flows. And then we look at their total outflows, which is $139,000. So again, this is what we have just input into the plan. This might be their mortgage, their daily living expenses, maybe travel is separated out, insurance premiums, everything is in this expenses column. Now, why this net cash flow is so important is because we want to see if a client has a deficit or if they have a surplus. So is there money left over at the end of the year or isn't there? Now, just because you have a negative number, which they do in this scenario, not necessarily a bad thing. Because when we are preparing for retirement, we are saving, we are investing so that once we reach that wonderful retirement age, that we have money to pull from. So in 2026 and for the next several years, they actually have a negative net cash flow. So that just means that the income that they are bringing in is not necessarily supplementing their lifestyle, and that money has to come from somewhere. That somewhere in retirement is their savings, their investment. We know that they have a brokerage account, their IRAs, savings accounts, so that $30,000 will come from one of those buckets. Now we go down a little bit further, about 7 years in the future, and this is when Frank reaches the age of 72. So that means currently in 2022, 72 is when you have to start taking required minimum distributions. So that's what this planned distribution column represents, is the required minimum distributions from Frank's IRA. Now in this year, it's $98,000. Their income at 72 plus the required minimum distributions gives them a total income of $190,000. Their expenses have grown over time, but they are less than what their income is. So of course, we have a surplus at the end of the year. Now that $28,000 has to go somewhere. We default to put it in just to a savings account or to reinvest it in, say, a taxable brokerage account. So you can see these first few years while they are working, they are contributing to their retirement. They are saving everything that they can throughout the year. Once they hit retirement, the growth slows down a little bit, but it still continues to grow. That's because their portfolio is, of course, appreciating. What we really look for in this category here is how much it's growing by or if it ever starts to decline. Now, it's of course possible that your withdrawal rate or the amount that you are taking out from your savings and investments starts to outpace how much it's actually growing by. So sometimes we'll start to see this number break down and head back the other way, but what we want to make sure it doesn't do is go to zero. So we always want to build in a margin of safety so that when stuff starts to hit the fan, there is, again, that margin of safety, that buffer in your plan that you do not run out of money. So those are the big things that we look at in your cash flow statement. What's coming in, what's going out? Do you have a surplus or a deficit at the end of the year? And how is that affecting your total portfolio assets? Does it continue to grow? Does it slow down? Or does it have a negative effect and start moving backwards? Okay. Now, the next one that we are going to look at is the Monte Carlo summary. You may have seen this report before. A lot of advisors run it. Some people hate it. Some people love it. It's not something that I would hinge my entire financial plan and rely just solely on the Monte Carlo summary on, but it's a nice proxy just to kind of see where you're headed. So we never know what the future is going to bring. But what Monte Carlo attempts to do is it runs 1,000 iterations of your portfolio given different market environments. So the outcome shows you what introducing random investment volatility in this analysis really looks like. So for Frank and Jane, if they have kind of average market timing, the median case for them, their total portfolio assets at the end of their life would be about 4.8 million. If markets performed really poorly, they would have about 2.6. And if markets really outperformed, they had a great outcome for the next 30, 40, 50 years of their life, they might have 10 million at the end of their plan. One thing I don't love about this report is their probability of success saying that it's 100%. We really can't guarantee that anything will happen, but given all the information that we have input, if all things stay equal, then they will have a pretty strong probability of success that they will not run out of money. So this is pretty basic, it's pretty surface level, but again, it's just a good proxy to run just to see how it turns out. Alrighty, now we are on to taxes. Taxes are one of the areas that clients really love to dig into, especially when it comes to retirement. It can be very confusing. There's a lot of questions surrounding retirement taxes. What does it look like? How does it work? And Pure Portfolios has a podcast called Blind Spots. You can find Blind Spots on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, really anywhere podcasts are distributed. But we just released a podcast episode called Taxes in Retirement. So if you have questions about taxes in retirement, we really just go over the basics to give people a framework and understanding for how taxes are calculated, what it looks like in retirement, and a few things to look out for. But we can really dig into taxes. This is just, again, pretty surface level income tax report, but we can see year over year, given your different stages of life, what your taxes are projected to be. Now, of course, we use our current tax rates. Those can always change in the future, and that's something that we can stress test as well for higher or potentially lower tax rates. So this can help us if we want to do Roth conversions. What does that tax liability look like? And then we can start to kind of tweak different things. Now, this is important, especially in retirement, because there are different benefits and supplements that are tied to your income. And so again, just looking at a bird's eye view, making sure that we're staying under different income thresholds, this is a really great area to do that in. So just to give you the quick rundown on Frank and Jane in this one, we know that they are working in these first couple of years. That's why they're in a higher tax bracket. Once they retire, their income is reduced pretty significantly. And then once Frank reaches 72 and Jane reaches 72 a few years after that, their required minimum distribution kicks in. And that's why their income tax rate starts to hike up again. Now, this area is what typically surprises retirees the most, is that you think you retire, your income is reduced, your taxes are going to be pretty low. You can see later in life, especially as their required minimum distribution really starts to ramp up, exactly how their income is affected by that as well, and subsequently, of course, their taxes too. So if this is something that you're really sensitive about, we can do some tax planning around it and help you out. All right, we are moving on to the estate planning portion of the plan. Now, we are not estate planning attorneys, but we can give some advice around how you want your assets to flow, what that really looks like, and then we can do some projections around taxes, what your heirs will receive, what your estate size will look like, things like that. So in the plan, Frank and Jane have each other as their primary beneficiaries. If one passes before the other, their spouse would receive their assets. After they both have passed, their assets then are split equally to their children. And if their children pass, we again have it split equally to all of their children, or Frank and Jane's grandchildren. So that's essentially what this shows. We'll have a flow chart in the next one that really lays it out. But this is helpful. Again, it's another bird's eye view. You can see what their gross estate really looks like. If they were to pass, what their taxes and potential expenses may be in relation to that. And then again, what their heirs would receive after those taxes and expenses have been paid. So again, I'm a visual person. I love seeing this graph because you can really get an idea for how much in taxes and expenses are really going to be taken up from the inheritance. But again, just a great way to see how assets are going to flow. So I mentioned the flow chart. This is kind of what it looks like. We have Frank's estate when he passes transfers to his spouse. When Jane passes, all of her assets will flow to their children, so on and so forth. So you can kind of see what it looks like at the end of their lifetime after we have projected their date of death around 90 years old, what that might look like to their heirs. So then they can start doing some estate planning, some tax planning around that so that their children are hit with lower taxes and expenses. That's something they might start doing earlier in life. But we can get pretty granular. We can see exactly what is in their estate. If they had anything out of their estate, that would be listed here, but for now it's just me. Okay, now as mind-numbing as looking at all of those reports can be, we hope that you see the value in looking through all of them. That's what really helps us give our analysis and our recommendations as well. So they may be more meaningful to us, but we often find value in clients being able to really see what their plan looks like. Now, the other thing that we do for clients that is not necessarily in such a mundane analysis point of view is we run scenarios. And this is typically our client's favorite part of the planning process is we can really give all of those what ifs. Now, there's a lot of people that say, well, what if we have higher inflation? What if our tax rates are increased in the future? What if the markets are really bad and we see zero returns for the next 30 years, Are all of those things likely to happen all at the same time? Probably not, but we can see what it might look like if it did. So this exercise is really helpful in giving you some peace of mind, being able to plan for the unknowns and potentially see what that looks like if it were to happen. So we always want to look in present value. It's just easier for the mind to digest. We look out in the future and see, okay, they're going to have 2.2 million at the end of their life. If we were to use that inflation rider and look at future dollars, they would say 4.5 million. And that's great. That is likely what they will essentially have. But in today's dollars, again, it's just easier for the brain to digest. So we're always going to look at present value. So Frank's a worrywart. He thinks that tax rates are going to be higher in the future. So we'll just toggle that on and see what that looks like. Now we have a 5% increase in tax rates. Now, 5% is relatively small, but it can be meaningful. There is a marginal value lost in their portfolio over their lifetime of about $150,000. So if tax rates were to increase in the future, that's roughly what they would lose to taxes over their lifetime. Now, we are always worried about the things that are out of our control, such as the markets. We cannot control what happens next. So again, Frank's a worrywart. He wants to see what would happen if his portfolio did not grow at all over the next 30 years or over his lifetime. So if we saw absolutely zero growth from now while he's still working all the way up until he passes, this is what his portfolio would look like. Now, this can be scary. 1.1 million loss over your lifetime is a lot of money. But what we always kind of fall back on is what is the terminal value? And they still have 1.1 left at the end of their lifetime. So that's a pretty good buffer that if other things were to happen, they would still have a pretty decent margin of safety. Okay, we're back at zero again. So the last thing that we are going to look at is inflation. It's of course a hot topic this year in 2022. So typically we default our inflation in our financial plans to 2.26%. We're going to bump it up to 5 and see what effect that would have on the plan. Now, some years it's going to be higher, some years it's going to be lower. You really never know. But if we were to see 5% inflation year over year for the next 30, 40 years, this is the effect that it would have on their plan. Now, again, are all of these things going to happen all at once and forever? It's pretty unlikely, but let's just toggle them all on and see what would happen if it did. So, like we just said, we want to see that margin of safety built into their plan. Now, it's kind of all about your comfortability. Some people want to try and spend down everything that they have up until their very last breath. And of course, we're not able to exactly say when that's going to be or how that will happen. But if all of these things that are out of your control do end up happening at the same time, Frank and Jane still have about $470,000 at the end of their lifetime, which we would deem as a pretty good margin of safety, that they should feel pretty safe and secure in this plan, that if inflation goes through the roof, their investments don't grow, and tax rates are all higher in the future, that they still have $470,000 at the end of their plan, and that is a very empowering place to be. Of course, there are a million scenarios that we could run. We could add in higher expenses. Maybe they want to buy a second home. Maybe they want to downsize. I mean, the possibilities are literally endless. We could sit here all day and go through this, but I've taken up enough of your time today, so we will close this video out. So thank you so much for watching this video. We hope that you see the value that financial planning can bring to one's life. I hope that we have lifted the veil a little bit on what the financial planning process looks like and feels like if you were to sit across from us and build a financial plan with Pure Portfolios. So if this is something that you are interested in or you have more questions, you can always reach out to us at insight@pureportfolios.com. But we hope to see you in our next video. Bye.